just it's not just relief, but just everything was more crisp and clear and less, bleh. At least for a lot of Americans. You've seen the meltdowns continuing yesterday, and you want to. There are these conversations that occur about a mental health crisis in this country, and I think that it is on full display. Nancy Pelosi crying at the speech that Kamala gave yesterday. Claire McCaskill breaking down and crying on MSNBC. I mean, you listen to some of these people; they do live in fantasy world. We'll play later. This right now, I'm planning on playing at the 7:00 hour, and Christy Fulnecki is here with us. But she was crying, and she was crying because she said she was so proud of Kamala Harris and everything she's accomplished. And when I listen, I'm not saying this in order to try and illustrate some point. I genuinely, in the modern era, cannot think of an elected official that is within that realm of level Kamala Harris is, who has done so little herself to actually get there. Listen, I'm not going to claim she's never done anything, but you think about that level. I mean, she didn't make it to the presidency. She made it to the White House, and then she made it to get in quotes the nomination. But she didn't even run for that. She did nothing for it. We know how she got her start. She got her very first elected position because she was Willie Brown's side piece, and he got her elected to that very first prosecution job, and that was because the background on that oftentimes gets overlooked, or it's just not talked about that much. She was a staffer in the prosecutor's office, and she wanted this promotion. She was not qualified. She didn't get it. And so she was Willie Brown's side piece, and she was whining about it. And he said, I'll get you elected to replace that person. And she entered into the race. She was a nobody. She polled at distant third until Willie Brown came out and said, no, this is, and that's how that area of the country worked at the time. Whatever Willie Brown said, the voters did. And the donors did, and the influencers, not today's version of influencers, but the political influencers. He was a kingmaker. And she was crying and whining because she was getting passed over for promotions because she was unqualified. So he gets her that position. Of course, she then also dismisses a number of criminal cases against his donors. There were numerous cases against his buddies, his friends, his donors that she dropped once she got that position or allowed them to settle for nothing. Well, then she was in. In terms of California, it's not like she had any grand Republican challengers that she really had to overcome. She decides she's going to run for the presidency, crash and burn before she even lifts off the runway. Biden says that he declares as a part of his campaign in order to cater to the left that he would do a DEI pick. It would be a woman of color. Well, then they began to look at the landscape, and there just was no, in the Democrat Party, woman of color that had any sort of resume that was going to speak to middle America. Kamala Harris was the only one because of the media pumping her up on a national stage, and despite the fact that she had to drop out very early on, before the Iowa race even occurred, because she just did so poorly at it, and she was not liked by the Democrat base during that primary system, so she had to drop out. But she was really the only individual after looking at the landscape that didn't have anything that was outrageously scandalous about her. And he boxed himself in. He made that declaration. So she got picked. Then the donors buy her the nomination. She's protected from even having to fight for delegates, deal with any challengers on the convention floor. She gets that handed to her. And then you see somebody like, who's just clearly a nut job, Claire McCaskill on MSNBC crying because she said she's so proud of all of her accomplishments. There is no one that has gotten even anywhere near that sphere of level that Kamala Harris has that has done less to accomplish it than Kamala Harris. I mean, she really is the true DEI pick, was, in terms of she did nothing to actually get there on her own. Nothing. I mean, if they had allowed the process to play out, at the very least at the convention, where other Democrats could have challenged her pick by the donors, and they had to go around and lobby the delegates, pitch their case, then at the very least you could say, well, she earned that. She at least did that. She didn't have to do that. And what I'm saying here isn't a criticism of her. It's of people like Claire McCaskill who craft these imaginary worlds around themselves in which, in her world, and I think she genuinely believes this, and this is the psychological dysfunction of so many people on the left, where they create these fantasy worlds around them. I think in her mind, she genuinely believes Kamala Harris has accomplished these amazing things, that she is worth crying over on national TV because she has gone above and beyond what most people could never even imagine with her accomplishments. Yet she's done nothing on her own. She's a spoiled individual who hasn't really ever had to earn anything on her own. It's part of the reason that she has such a difficult time. Anytime she is actually in charge of something, it falls apart. Because she's never had to do it on her own. And if you don't ever do something on your own and then fail at it and recalibrate, that's how you learn. When you're a baby and you learn to crawl and then you learn to walk, it's all about how every time you fall, learning to get back up, and your body just trains itself. And this is how you learn. Kamala Harris was really never even allowed to learn how to fight and win and earn things on her own. To a large degree, she is a product of her environment. When you roll out the red carpet, when you craft scenarios to custom fit a certain person and they never have to fight for themselves, it's part of the reason it's so amusing to watch the same people who helped get her to the place that she is by handing her everything sit around and try to, figure out why she didn't do a better job of campaigning. Well, she never really had to. In any real, true, hardcore, meaningful way. But you see this fantasy world, this romanticism that gets created in the delusional minds of people like Claire McCaskill, in which in their minds she really is this incredible warrior that's fought her whole life tooth and nail, and she's taken on and beaten some of the most impressive individuals, and I mean, she just should be admired, and she's earned nothing. It is a instructive moment of understanding about the left and why it is that, frankly, so many of their policies fail miserably because they live in this world of make believe where it's like they fantasize, they romanticize certain situations, whether it is about people who have never actually done anything on their own, but they see them as these great warriors, or getting into office and somehow thinking that they are going to be able to do something that no one else has ever done and make healthcare free and cheap for everyone by having government control it, or eliminate poverty by sticking it to rich people, or any of the, ban guns and that's going to stop violence. And, they craft these fantasy worlds. And Claire McCaskill breaking down and crying over what in her mind are these fantastic lifelong accomplishments of Kamala Harris, saying she's just so proud of her. Aside from being humiliating, it's a frightening evaluation of how detached some of these people are from reality. Weather coming up in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. It's going to feel very much like fall over the next couple of days. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 59. Tonight we'll see a low around 43. For your Friday, partly sunny skies with a high near 63. And on Saturday, an 80% chance of showers, mainly before noon, and then we'll have a high near 62.
Okay. As dust settles, there's a lot of conversation about what happens here, what happens there, what happens with the lawfare against Donald Trump. It has perhaps it has become forgotten that Trump is supposed to be sentenced here very soon.
I think it's the 26th.
Yeah, so what happens with that? Get you updated on all the possibilities, the implications, and the Fed component of this, Jack Smith, that is getting wrapped up. And when they say wrapped up, they don't mean wrapping up the case to present, but wrapping it up as in this is done and over with. So that is going away for reasons that are grounded in consistency. And so just going to give you a quick update on all the lawfare situations coming up here in just a couple of moments. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447 KSGF. Okay, according to NBC News, well, other outlets have published this as well at this point. The U.S. Department of Justice making moves to wind down the 2 federal criminal cases against Trump before he takes office. The lawfare concession complies with the longstanding DOJ policy stipulating that a sitting president can't be prosecuted. Now, I think that the surface headline can mislead some people. Not intentionally, but when you hear the prosecutor, they're winding down their case, might believe that to mean, that they're presenting, that they're ready to pull the trigger on this, and though they have been for some time, of course, that's not what they're talking about. They're saying, close it up, done and over with. And it is. Longstanding DOJ policy. But there are a lot of things that have been longstanding DOJ policy that this administration has not adhered to. You know, like charging a president or a past president during election cycles, there have been so many things that have been unprecedented. So why all of a sudden? Well, one, Trump said within 2 seconds of swearing in he would fire Jack Smith. Now, of course, one may think, but wouldn't that give Democrats more ammunition for more lawfare against him? I believe that within the Democrat Party right now, there is at least a segment of influential folks, and arguably the Obama camp is even in this. There has got to be a reset. There has to be a reset in imaging. There has to be a reset in messaging. And recognizing that the lawfare stuff against Trump only helped him. Now you and I have recognized that over about the past year. I mean, that seems obvious, right? But there's a lot of things that are obvious that Democrats have been in total denial over. Their reaction to this election is evidence of that. But the reality is something that is much more difficult for them to ignore, given that they have suffered the consequences of it. You know, when the polling numbers would indicate that lawfare wasn't working against Trump, but in fact working for him, they could still deny it. Because all that matters really is the power, and come election time, that's when there is they're forced to deal with the consequences of their behavior. And while there will still be some in denial, and there are, I mean, you hear them talk about, it's just racism, or it's because of this, or it's because of that. It's and not trying to have a real evaluation of what the landscape is. But there are clearly people within the Democrat Party that recognize what we have been doing. The results of this is that we have handed the Republicans power over everything, barring any unforeseen circumstances with the still yet undecided House races. That right now, though we shouldn't necessarily accept it in full faith, the expectation is that Republicans are going to retain the House. And midterms, that is, of course, historically a time in which the party not in power should make gains, hoping to, at the very least, get the House back. The Democrats are, and the powers that be, I'm sure, are recognizing that we do not want to be doing this lawfare stuff. We don't, up until the midterms, because that has been a loser for us. They don't want to say that. So instead, they portray themselves as, we're just law and order and ethical and honest, and this is DOJ precedent. And so that's why we're going to drop these cases against Donald Trump. And it is true, it is precedent. But like I said before, there's a lot of precedent, including using law to go after your political opposition, that the Democrats have not adhered to, or, not going after, and it turned this country into a banana republic. Fortunately, the people rejected it, And the upside of the people rejecting it is the Democrats perhaps recognizing that that's not the route to go in the country, at least right now. That being said, what of the so-called hush money case? Trump is currently awaiting a ruling from Merchant on whether the Supreme Court's recent presidential immunity decision has rendered Trump's guilty verdict untenable. Trump attorneys, of course, arguing that the verdict should be thrown out. But if the immunity ruling is unfavorable to Trump, the next step would be for Merchant to sentence Trump on November 26th. All right, so what does that look like? We've got to take a break, and I'll tell you what the potentials are there here in just a couple of moments. I'm Nick Reed. KSGF.com. Show us your best shot. Give us your best shot. Once again, thanks to Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio. A little fun, your chance to win an awesome hunting prize package that was personally put together by Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio. He's a hunter himself, so he knows this stuff. And it's just submit pics of your hunting pics, your kills. Does not have to be from this season. It could be from past seasons. And they could be photos that you've submitted in previous contests. Of all of you who enter, submit pics, one will randomly be drawn in order to win that prize pack. So head over to KSGF.com and click on the big give us your best shot tile, and then you'll scroll down and you'll see where it is to submit your photos at KSGF.com.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 59. Tonight, partly cloudy skies with a low around 43. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 63. And on Saturday, we'll see an 80% chance of showers, mainly before the noon hour, and then a high near 62.
All right, so the Jack Smith-fed lawfare cases against Trump are wrapping up. It's always been a precedent in this country that you don't prosecute a sitting president. Of course, if the left talks about this any, it will be in the context. They'll claim that this is because the Supreme Court said that Donald Trump can execute anyone he wants if he's president, so they have to wrap this up. Of course, none of that is anywhere close to true. This has been the practice, though that has not stopped the Democrats over the last several years of breaking precedent and tradition or even violating the law in this country in order to go after Trump. I think this is a recognition that they know the lawfare thing did not work. It only hurt them, and I believe that the more reasonable heads in the Democrat Party, I don't know if reasonable is the less hysterical heads who are able to recognize the reality of what has occurred around them with this election have realized that this only hurts them. So they will couch it as they're just sticking with precedent. Though, like I said, the Joe Scarboroughs of the world will claim it's because of the Supreme Court ruling, I'm sure. But what about the so-called hush money case? The Trump folks have been arguing before Judge Merchan that, hey, that Supreme Court ruling regarding the presidential immunity when you are carrying out an act as president that, again, wasn't a change. It wasn't handing Trump or, at the time, Biden any power. It was saying that's the way it's always been, and just because you want to go after a former president doesn't mean you can. And the argument that the Trump team is making, legal team, is that because in that case, many of the witnesses that they brought forth were witnesses that were asked questions about conversations having to do with Trump's presidential duties. And because the Supreme Court said, no, that stuff is not fair game, all that should be thrown out. Now, there's a very good chance that in line with the recognition this lawfare has backfired on the Democrats and they are recognizing they need to start with a clean slate in order to try to win back some power, they may just rule, yep, that's true. Say, you know what, yep, and then that's the end of it. If the immunity ruling, however, is unfavorable to Trump, he is set to be sentenced on the 26th of November. Now, a source familiar with Trump's legal team and the plans, his legal team plans, told the Washington Examiner that they believe a sentencing hearing is unlikely to even occur, at least not any time before Trump's term in the White House expires. Quote, I'm guessing will run to Merchan with a motion to stay later this week. There are a lot of grounds to stay, including potentially a supremacy clause argument, because the president has statutory duties during the transition. My strong suspicion is that the sentencing will not even occur. If Trump's defense team, according to the Washington Examiner, successfully does get the case stayed, meaning that a court agrees to pause it, that stay could last through the end of Trump's term in office. So there's no, well, we can do a stay for a year, and then after that, this has to be kicked or addressed. They can say, all right, we'll pause this, but once he's not president anymore, we're going to come right back after him. Bragg or the court could find it constitutionally unsound to wrap up a sitting president in court proceedings, a finding that would align with the Department of Justice's policy of avoiding prosecuting presidents while they're in office. The court proceedings could be revived upon Trump's exit from the White House, but Trump's legal team's aggressive plans to escalate the case to the appellate court or even the Supreme Court at every possible turn makes a revival a distant prospect at this stage. So what the Washington Examiner is assessing here is what the Trump legal team plan is, and that is, okay, get a stay on sentencing, but once he's in the White House, want to get this thing taken care of, at least on our end, arguing that this case is illegitimate, so that part of it is decided now while he's president, instead of once the stay is lifted, if it is after he exits the White House, and then they can resume lawfare against him. Regarding whether or not Trump could still be sentenced, the Washington Examiner writes that Trump was convicted of the 34 low-level felonies carrying a maximum 4-year prison sentence, but sentencing guidelines have always suggested Trump would face far less time behind bars than that, or perhaps no time at all. Now, in the event that the sentencing hearing does proceed, Merchant would face limitations on what penalties he could impose, according to New York-based attorney Karen Agnifilio, who once served in a top role in the Manhattan District's office. Telling the Washington Examiner anything that would interfere with his ability to serve as president would actually be unconstitutional and in violation of the Supremacy Clause, adding that a fine or community service could be possible, but the probation or jail would not be an option. Trump's attorneys would also have the ability to appeal the verdict once Merchant imposes a sentence, and an appellate court could indefinitely pause the implementation of the sentencing at that point while higher courts decide whether the verdict should still stand. So that is what is being evaluated at this time, and the next step apparently is going to be whether or not there is agreement with Trump's legal team that this should be thrown out anyway because of the Supreme Court's decision when it comes to the Supremacy Clause, when it comes to immunity, and if not, then the sentencing question comes up. So that is where things are now. In Florida, that case that was essentially kicked because the Biden administration had to acknowledge that there was tampering with evidence and a number of other reasons as well. Jack Smith, of course, involved in that case. And then you've got the Georgia situation in which Fani Willis, who won re-election, has argued that she's still going after Trump. So I've yet to see any sort of legal analysis, the implications of the election on that particular case, but I'm sure that we shall hear that as well. Ultimately, I believe that Democrats are going to try to make all of this go away, let it quietly go away, because they don't want to appear as if they've lost. They will essentially be forced to address it, paint it as this is why Trump ran for president, so that he could use his power in order to make these things go away. But what are you going to do? But ultimately, it is the recognition that all of this helped Trump. It didn't hurt him. And it hurt their reputation. That the people were tired of this sort of thing. And to continue, this is what my hope is for the country. That the American people, the first Trump administration, dealt to a large degree with all of the just the nonstop investigations against Trump, the impeachment. I'm talking prior to the lawfare stuff, after he was out of office and it became clear he was going to run for president again, and then they kicked that in. But, the allegations of Russian collusion and the different, all these investigations and impeachment. The first time around, now Trump supporters, of course, rejected it. Trump haters loved it. But you had a lot of middle Americans like, well, yeah, this does sound serious. This stuff should be investigated. We need to see what all this is about. January 6th included, in terms of, those post his presidency. I don't think that the American people are going to want to deal with that this time. I think that this time around, given everything that they have put Trump through and Americans through over the last 4 years, in retrospect, has awakened Americans into realizing what they were doing to him while he was president, that was BS as well. Like the average American who gave the benefit of the doubt to those who wanted to investigate Trump while he was president, thinking that the allegations were serious, it should be looked into, that now in retrospect, they see that for what it was. And they don't, I think that the average American is not, they're not going to want to go through that again. Not that they wanted to before, but but this time around, they're going to really see it as what it is. And that would backfire on the Democrats. And given that they are going to desperately want to get control back during the midterm elections, and then, of course, win the White House, I do believe that there are going to be those individuals in the Democrat Party that are smart enough to recognize that that sort of thing is not going to help them. They tried it, didn't work, and in fact, it will hurt them. Fingers crossed that evaluation will relieve the American people of at least that stuff during the Trump presidency. Now, there's been a lot made of Attorney General Alita James, and she had this press conference, and she's the one who ran for Attorney General, saying that she would go after Trump. And Hochul and Lolita James held this press conference about, well, we're going to really go after him if he comes after us. And a lot of people wondering what she means by that. I think that that's all talk at this point. I think it's saving face. I think that it is a recognition that they are not going to be able to do anything to Trump from the Attorney General's office in New York, but they don't want to look as if they're just sheepishly shrinking away because Trump won. And so instead they're playing the watchful eye, like, don't you worry, we're going to keep an eye on him. And boy, oh boy, if he comes after us, we're really going to show him. I think it's posturing at this point. It's a bit of saving face. Though, all that being said, I have learned not to underestimate the ability of Democrats to make very poor strategic political decisions because they have no control over their hysteria when it comes to hating the opposition. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Thought I'd give an update on the Arizona Senate race and Carrie Lake there, who was really not expected to win that Senate race, and then she really, really closed the gap in the last couple of weeks, and things are too close to call at this point. For a lot of Americans, it is very difficult to understand why it is that some of these districts in the country are incapable of doing what it is that the majority of the country is able to do, and that is count votes in a responsibly timely manner. California is one of the worst. I mean, it takes weeks sometimes. And there is one thing in common with the counties that have these problems and in the states. It's consistently run by Democrats. Arizona, Democrat Secretary of State, and you get like Maricopa County, in which you have elections run by Democrats, and this is, again, consistent across the country, and these are always, now, not that every Democrat-run county has these problems, but every time there's a county, it's like, just so you know, it's going to take us a couple weeks. We can't figure this thing out. That's consistently run by Democrats. Now, some will say it is because of the incompetency of the people running these particular areas of the country. Others will say it's corruption, trying to figure out how to rig it. Maybe it's a combination of the two. The one thing that it is, undeniably, is inexcusable. But the people in those counties vote for these people to run these things, and that's democracy at work. When it comes to that particular Senate race in Arizona, somehow they've only managed to count 70% of the votes. Kari Lake is at 47.9%, and Gallego is at 50%. So he's got a lead that I don't know that could be overcome. It seems to slowly but surely be getting larger, which, of course, feeds into the belief many people have that something funny's going on, because what tends to happen historically is anytime there is a precinct, a district, a county in which they demonstrate that they are incapable of counting votes in a timely manner, like the vast majority of the rest of the country, and slowly the votes start trickling in, it becomes inconsistent with the voting patterns that have occurred leading up until that point, and all of a sudden the Democrat either increases the lead or, if they're behind, closes the gap. And I mean, people can argue all they want about whether or not that is the sign of cheating, but what it cannot be argued is that historically, consistently, that is the way that those things always go. But that gap, I will say, Kari Lake's election was really not on the radar in any way, shape, or form in terms of a potential pickup of a seat. So the fact that it is as close as it is something that is arguably unexpected for the Republicans in terms of another potential pickup. But they are, one way or another, they've already gotten a majority in the Senate. It's just a question on some of these other states, Arizona being one of them. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com for all of your home loan needs, your refinancing needs. I've got a story. CEO says Trump win brings newfound optimism to U.S. real estate. Quote, momentum is about to change big time in the U.S. The dream of younger people in particular being able to buy a home is once again back. And that is something that, of course, is going to have an impact when it comes to the home loan market. Fed's expected to cut interest rates again, for better or worse, when it comes to the issue of inflation and so forth. But all of that does have an impact when it comes to home loans and refinancing possibilities. And if you don't know, which most of us don't, we don't know. But the Carrickers and their team, they do. This is what they do every day. And a message that they have stressed in the past is whenever you see one of the analysts or experts in this industry on television talking about a prediction or here's what's getting ready to happen, that's usually a few weeks behind what it is that people like the Carrickers and their team already know, because this is what they do on a daily basis. So for any sort of question, evaluation that you would like to get regarding home loans, refinancing, you can start at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Stock market responding to the Trump election and responding well. The Dow Jones Industrial Average surging 1,425 points to a record high, or around 3.4%. The last time the blue chip Dow jumped more than 1,000 points in a single day was in November of 2022. The S&P 500 also hit an all-time high, popping 2.4%. NASDAQ climbing 2.8% to a record of its own. Now, of course, you're going to see different fluctuations and variations. The one thing, though, we can expect to once again start hearing is anytime there is talk about the stock market doing well, that will be a reflection of the Wall Street fat cats doing well. That was what we heard during the first Trump administration. Anytime, and all the economic indicators during the Trump years after the tax cuts went into place for small businesses, corporations, and average Americans, for everybody, rich people, poor people, everybody. All of the matrix in economic terms began improving. One of those, of course, was the stock market as well. And I remember Democrats campaigning on this, that, well, sure, Wall Street was doing well. That's just Trump rewarding the Wall Street fat cats. Now, when the same stock market was doing well under the Biden administration, that was a sign of how great things are. But be prepared. We're going to go back to it's only a sign of how great the Wall Street fat cats are doing. Wilder RV, Clinton, Missouri. What a nice drive. Just an hour north of Springfield for all of your RV needs. Routine maintenance, non-routine maintenance, whatever it may be. You got a little leak there in the ceiling after the season of RVing, or maybe the steps aren't coming out the way that they should, air conditioning issues, hoses, whatever it might be. They're going to be able to help you as you get that thing ready to put away for winter. And then, of course, all sorts of end-of-year deals as well. Financing is available for less than a night's stay at a decent hotel. You can have a monthly payment that low for a family-sized brand-new RV from Wilder RV. I know many of you you feel renewed, you feel hopeful. We're hearing increasingly from people in industries just about the hopeful nature of things, and maybe that'd be a great way to embrace what is hopefully going to be better days for all Americans, for everyone, even those that may not see it that way. We want that for all of us. And start doing the RV thing. Get out in nature. Get away from everything. WilderRV.com. You can also find them at KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. Hey, everyone. It's Christy Fulnecki.
Good morning.
How are you doing over there?
Can you hear me?
There. Sorry.
Okay, I'll wait
Yep,
till
sure
I'm
do. Well, you're all dressed up. Yeah, I mean, you're just
They
really
used to call it patriotism. I don't know what they call it anymore.
terrorism.
Terrorism. Not anymore. I've been posting God saved America, so thank you, God, for saving us.
You got, and a majority of Americans, popular vote as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which is that's nice to have that.
You know what? And so we have to thank Jesus because everybody was praying. That did a lot. And thank the Americans. But, I mean, spike that football, everybody. I mean, great job. I mean, we can gloat as much as they did to Trump and to us. I mean, the people, the garbage in America, we can gloat right now.
Well,
we're entitled to it for a couple of days.
Things are, for example, the currency in Iran has fallen to an all-time low, and they're petrified what is going to happen to them and their ability to continue to fund terrorism. I mean, there are certain things that are immune from rhetoric, but instead are reactionary to reality. And the fact that Zelensky and Putin, the Kremlin's been like, well, we'll see if Trump can help us bring this to an end. Zelensky's like, I'm looking forward to, we talked about a detailed plan already. There's all sorts of rhetoric, but then there's reality. And we're already seeing surface results of the reality and I've argued this, that for some time, I believe that Zelensky, I think NATO, I don't know if they just really necessarily hoped that Trump would win, but recognize the benefit of it, that this quagmire that everyone is in with Russia and Ukraine, which there was no end in sight. Trump is the end in sight. And I think Putin wants this thing done and over with, but needs to save face. Zelensky wants this done and over with. And to a degree, it's not as much saving face for him as much as protecting the country.
Yeah.
Neither side wants to look like they lost. Trump understands that. And I think they see this as, they genuinely believe, both sides, that this thing can come to an end because Trump is new. They can craft something that looks like nobody lost, and that's what they need to do in order for this to end. And then at the same time, you've got, the Iranian currency falling to an all-time low after this election. So already things are beginning to go back in terms of this foreign policy stuff to the way that it was before. It's reacting to what they know Trump is. And the reason that that you see more immediate reactions in this capacity is because these aren't things that these are the things that Trump can impact unilaterally to the greatest degree.
Yeah.
It isn't like a tax cut where you have to get Congress on board. They have to do legislation. They have to go through all of that and the negotiation and the back and forth between the Senate and the House. When it comes to coming up with some sort of deal in the Middle East or between Ukraine and Russia, Trump can do that. And so they know how immediate these desires of Trump and his efforts can be so directly. And so that's why this stuff is already reacting. That's why the dollar's falling in Iran, because they know what's to come.
And you know what? He doesn't even have to do anything.
Well,
I mean, he just
know.
has to like be there. I mean, in that thing I text you guys at our group chat about the Hamas leaders saying, I mean, that was on Newsmax, so I assume that there's some credible source. They were going to drop the war with Israel. Literally, it wasn't even 24 hours, and now, I mean, you're going to have, and people that think this peace through strength is just a slogan. I mean, people are afraid of him. And he literally doesn't have to do anything. He just has to be there.
And I know that it's difficult for a lot of people to believe, but you just look at the reality of it. And I'm telling you, Israel has been waiting for this outcome to determine whether or not they're going to have to go to full-blown military war against Iran or not. And Trump's election, they know that when Trump was president and the sanctions, he brought Iran to its knees, that cut off all the funding to terrorist organizations. And if I'm telling you, their view of this is if Trump gets elected, we will not have to open full-blown military war against Iran because we know what he did before.
Yeah.
Where we were. And that's part of the reason the dollar's falling in Iran, because they know as well. And so everybody understands the implications of this. And so while people can talk rhetorically about all these horrible things that are going to happen, meaningful things are already happening because they know, and they know the landscape with Trump as president.
And why do you think all the car manufacturers in Mexico, everybody stopped a few weeks ago? So, I mean, literally the whole world stopped. And now, I mean, I'm sure, I was thinking, we were talking about yesterday, I can't even imagine how many meetings there were about moving manufacturing in the United States. I mean, the whole entire world has changed. In America, but literally within 24 hours. It's amazing.
And what I hope is, funny, a friend of mine had sent me a text. He's on the left, and I don't know what I was talking about at the particular moment, but he's like, you sound angry. You should just be happy. You should, be happy, and which, of course, I am extremely happy. But what I really, truly, genuinely hope as a human being is that the people who really, really, really don't like Trump and really believe all these horrible things are going to happen. Not that everything's going to automatically be wonderful because of Trump, and not that he's going to do everything perfect, but whenever things do start to get better, enjoy those things. Don't.
Now, who are you talking about? The crazy people?
People that believe things are going to go horribly bad.
Oh, okay.
That when they don't, and when things do, if they do, which I believe they will, start to go good for the small business owner and for the average worker, and we kind of start getting back to where we were before, don't, because of a belief and a refusal to let go of that belief that Trump is horrible and bad, let that make you not enjoy the good things that will come
well
of it.
If you're talking about the crazy people on the left that were having meltdowns,
well, that's a whole nother thing.
If you're talking about that segment, and
we're going to talk about that.
Media, that's one of the greatest things. That's what everybody was like. Everybody wanted to watch a View yesterday. I was so mad I was in court because I was like, I wish I could see what they're doing on the View. I mean, it is just, the meltdown is great. But you know what? We deserve a few days of enjoying this. I
mentioned Dana Perino's total class act the night of the election. Harold Ford Jr. was on there, former Democrat congressman, saying that, well, he hopes that Trump supporters are gracious, and that and Dana Perino, who is one of the most gracious people out there, she's like, you know what? No. She goes, I think that Trump, she didn't say it that starkly. She goes, everything that the Trump supporters have been called, have been accused of, they deserve to celebrate a little bit. They deserve it.
To put in somebody's face, but after what we've been through for 4 years, we can do it. We can celebrate. We deserve it.
Chrissy Fulnecki with us. We're going to get a look at the weather here in just a moment. Right now, the latest news.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 59. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 43. For your Friday, partly sunny skies with a high near 63. And on Saturday we'll see an 80% chance of showers, mainly before the noon hour, and then a high near 62.
Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio, once again is sponsoring our Show Us Your Best Shot hunting prize package up for grabs. KSGF.com, upload those hunting picks. They can be this season or past seasons. One person will be randomly chosen to win that totally awesome, incredible hunter's pack that was put together by Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio. He himself being a hunter, he knows the goods. So that is at KSGF.com. Christy Filnecki is with us. Kamala Harris speaking yesterday. Nancy Pelosi was there crying, as were a lot of other people. And there's a lot of picking apart what she had to say. It's 12 minutes. Wasn't that inspiring? I thought it was okay. I knew ahead of time because I knew she just couldn't help herself to make sort of this dig by saying that she will accept the results because that's what you do.
I know. Yeah.
That's that sort of.
Is anybody surprised?
And it's like, okay, fine, whatever. You know what? You lost. Have your moment. Make it. I don't have any problem with it.
She got her last minute word salad in.
Yeah.
Because I mean, she was mixing it up and started talking about the stars. I was like,
do you know?
Are you freaking kidding me? What is your obsession with the stars?
I don't.
Get to Earth and solve some problems. And I've got to tell you this so I don't forget. If anybody can get and listen to Gutfeld last night, I was crying. I was laughing so hard. I don't know how long they've been doing this, but they do bongos when she talks. and there's bongos playing, and she's speaking. And I mean, my husband and I, Eric and I, were rolling. I was crying. I was laughing. They said we got to do the last minute bongo, and I mean, they do it when she was speaking and talking about the stars, and you're hearing the bongos play in the background. I mean, it is so funny.
I don't have the audio of it. I wish I did, because of the stars thing, where at the end she sets this thing up about, this writer, philosopher or something, and then she gives the quote along the lines of, you until it's truly darkest, you don't really see how bright the stars are or something. But what was funny is that's really kind of a cliched, like,
Yeah.
it's only, what is it? And Nixon said the thing about you can't truly see how high the mountains are until you're in the lowest valley. There's a whole number of different variations of that. And it's one of the most cliched little type of line from a greeting card that's trying to lift your spirits. But the way she presented it was as if that conceptual quote was something that she discovered, and everyone was just like, oh, and I'm like, that is such a cliched, and I'm not saying it wasn't appropriate, but the way that they all acted, like, oh my gosh, I've never even heard anything like that before. I was like, have you never gotten a get well card, or like, sorry things are going rough, but hey, don't forget, there's no rainbow without the rain. I mean, it was just such a funny.
Dark it was too. It was like brown and dark, and I mean, and her outfit and the whole thing. I mean, why would you be surprised that she would be negative and condescending? Like, these people did not learn what, like,
But let
whatever
me tell you,
reflection she had over that last 12 hours or 24 hours, she does not get it.
And like I said, I felt overall, I didn't think it was anything outrageous or atrocious. I didn't think it was anything great or special. It was pretty much, I don't know, mundane to me, cookie cutter, boilerplate. But what she did say in there, she was letting everyone know that everything's going to be, she said to the young people that are watching, it's okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay, right? And here's where I think the people need to hold these people accountable morally. And by that, I don't mean do anything, but just remember, these are the same people that have been pounding away at the message that not only is it not going to be okay if Donald Trump wins prior to the election, that it was going to be the end of democracy as we know it, that Nazis were going to be taking over.
Yeah, right.
That Trump was going to turn the military on political opposition, people he did not like, that he is going to execute journalists. I mean, these are the things that these people have been saying. Then to turn around and be like, don't worry, it's actually going to be okay.
And I was lying when I said all that.
Because this means one of two things. Either you think that it's okay that all those things are going to happen, or you knew that that's not true.
Right.
And I think that it's the latter of the two.
Yeah,
and
obviously, like, if you think Trump's Hitler and the tanks are coming, you're all standing right in the middle of D.C., so you're not taking cover.
This is what is, it is, to me, morally reprehensible. I get campaigns, lies by omission, lies about this and that, but when you knowingly are telling people lies about if this guy wins, it's the end of the country, concentration camps, executions. I just think that is so over the line. And you can't then, and then afterwards be like, oh, just kidding. Don't worry. We'll get through this. No, that is unacceptable. That is totally unacceptable. And I don't know. I wish that there was some way to really get all those people together and be like, listen, and just lecture them about this.
You know what?
Because they just did it, and that's true. That's true.
Landslide. I mean, to me, that's a smack in the face.
But I guess there's nothing that those of us who recognize this can do about it. But I wish the people that were susceptible to it, or the people who are supporters of, because those are the people that need to say, listen, we're on your side ideologically, and we think Trump is awful. But you getting people whipped into a frenzy and claiming that all of these horrible things are going to happen, only to then go, well, don't worry, it actually isn't going to be that bad. That is not acceptable.
Yeah, and people did do, like, all the audio that you played this week of people that had never voted for Trump and now they're suddenly voting for Trump. that is, I mean, that is the consequences. So people did speak. I mean, that's all the people,
Yeah.
the normal people that left
But the
the
other
party.
consequence is the other consequence is motivating people who believe it into trying to kill Trump.
Yeah, right.
And that
Yeah,
happened twice. Actually,
that's
more than
right.
twice,
Yeah,
but twice that came very, very close, including one time when he was actually shot. So while, yes, the majority of Americans did reject it, there are still real serious consequences because people believe that stuff. When this is part of what really, it bothers me for a number of reasons. One, to make accusations that have such devastating in real life consequences and then afterwards be like, oh well,
yeah,
not
right.
really, so dismissive of it, something that caused another human being to more than one to try to kill the president of the United States, totally disrupting our election cycle and the way that we do elections, and then just to be allowed to be like, oh, never mind, it's not going to be that bad
Yeah,
after all. But also it diminishes Hitler
I know.
because
Yeah, yeah.
you are taking him. I mean, no wonder young people increasingly seem to be less bothered by Hitler when you are
I have
saying,
no
"Oh,"
idea. Yeah,
because they see Trump in real life, and they are telling people who don't necessarily have any sort of connection or even because of public schools a real understanding of the implications of Hitler, and they're teaching young people that Hitler was no worse than that guy there, that Donald Trump, they were pretty much the same. Well, talk about diminishing what Hitler
yeah,
did.
right. And that's why you heard that Holocaust survivor, how
Yeah.
upset he was about the whole thing. And but again, I mean, all the Jewish people that came out and voted for him. Um, I know. I mean, it's crazy, but I mean, if you look at the the Joe guy and
Scarborough?
Morning Joe, yeah, and I mean, everybody had. It's just so enjoyable to see him have a meltdown.
Did
But
you?
I mean, but if you listen to them and the people that were there, like, I mean, some of this stuff on TikTok that I've been seeing on the news is just insane. How these liberals are reacting, but I mean, it really is those extreme people in the Democratic Party have mental illness. I mean,
Yeah, it's
seriously,
true.
they do have mental illness,
And
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 that
it's not it's not a mental illness to be unhappy about it. It's not a mental illness even to be depressed a little bit about it or to be angry about it, because I think normal Trump supporters would have been very despondent and have a, but there's a measured response, there's a normal response, and what you're talking about are these people that are just screaming into their phones and going
yeah.
hysterical. And I mean, I see adults, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. Really? You don't
But it
know?
relates to what you were saying earlier, to your earlier point. How could you say these things about Trump? These are the same people that were saying that we were garbage and that Trump was Hitler. So these are the hysterical people in your party that do have mental illness, that have pushed all this wacky stuff and all these surgeries on kids and everything else. And so, I mean, they hold them accountable, but I mean, they seriously have something wrong with them.
Nancy Pelosi, did you? I'm not sure if you
Oh,
heard her opening words when she had her first little press conference
oh
after
no,
the.
I didn't.
This was yesterday.
Point saying good morning, because it certainly is not one.
Oh,
No point in saying good morning, because it certainly is not one.
so
No point. And, like, why are
I
you
mean,
still even talking?
and why are you still in your party? Are you still the leader? I
She's like,
mean,
I
if
heard
I
there
was,
was, rosé here, a little Chardonnay. That's
yeah,
why
I
she
think just
showed up.
egg on their face.
All right, we're going to get a traffic update. Continue on here with Christy Fulnecki this morning. We do have an author of the week coming up, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone in the 8 o'clock hour. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. In 2 years, we need to start posting. So where are the concentration camps? You said there are going to be concentration camps. Where are all the Nazis and so forth? It would be nice if there was some sort of official list of these are the things that people claimed Donald Trump was going to do. Concentration camps, deport all Muslims, political prisoners, assassinate political opposition, ban abortion on a federal level, ban birth control, all these things. And then at the end of his first term, if just do a checklist and see how many of them he actually did, and then go back, because let's not forget, these aren't just random people on the internet claiming these things. It was the Kamala Harris campaign, the Biden administration, the major media outlets, and I do not think they should be allowed to lob such serious allegations that are not true without there being some sort of consequences for it. And I don't mean even legal consequences, but as an American people, just reject it. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 59. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 43. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 63. And on Saturday, we'll see an 80% chance of showers and a high near 62.
Ain't sunny yet.
It's a happy day in America, though, I can tell you that.
Well, Joe Biden's scheduled to deliver remarks to the nation on what will be his first appearance on camera in the aftermath of the victory.
And, all he has to say is, hey, I told you so.
Yeah. Like, what do you think of me now? I just, let me tell you.
I voted for Trump.
This really does truly kill me. And this isn't political so much. I'm sitting there and they're doing the coverage. I'm watching and they're talking with all these different Democrats and having these discussions about who's at fault, who's at fault, and about those that are blaming Joe Biden because of the fact that, well, he should have dropped out earlier. He should have dropped out a year ago. Of all of the people who had a say in whether or not he ran for re-election and got the nomination. He was the last person mentally equipped to make that decision.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, all of these people that are like, well, he should have dropped out, were the ones that were out there telling people he was fine, encouraging him to run by covering for him.
yeah.
They were the ones that, in retrospect, they admit now they knew that he wasn't fine. This is like you have, someone in your family that you know is not cognitively capable of committing to something of a serious nature, encouraging them to enter into some financial agreement that is a disaster, and then whenever it blows up in their face, blaming them for doing it.
Yeah. So they're enablers.
They're not
Yeah,
just enablers.
right.
They were these are the people that moved the primaries around so that Iowa wouldn't be first because they were afraid that Iowa, he may not be strong. South Carolina, they knew he was going to be the strongest there, so they moved that. They threatened to take away the vote of the Democrat voters in New Hampshire if New Hampshire didn't move theirs in order to accommodate this. So they made all of these moves, not to mention refused to, the whole reason JFK Jr., and I love all of this, that he even ended up running as an independent is because they did everything they could to rig it so he couldn't run against Biden.
Right.
So all of the apparatus, including the media was all part of this. They created this rigged system so that Biden would be the nominee. And now they're like, well, he should have dropped. He should have known better. What are you talking about? You guys are the ones that did this. There's no accountability. And the person who is senile you're blaming for making the wrong decision.
That's right. But it's funny. Like, you don't hear any about that until the day after when you lose. So, I mean, you had nothing. And it was just they were just so shocked. The thing that I don't really, even for Republicans, is that, some of them, even conservatives, are so surprised that he won by such a by a landslide. I mean, and I'm totally not surprised at all. I was just worried about the cheating, how much that, that would play into it. But I mean, you have
too big to rig.
Yeah. I mean, but it is incredible. I think Lord Trump said there were, 230,000 volunteers and attorneys, across the country that were watching, that were, taking action as far as, cheating and making sure that the election had integrity. I mean, I can't even imagine the kind of organization that they had in place to fight that. Yeah. It's really incredible to me.
I just want, and I keep going back to it because I want these people to be forced to answer for it, just verbally answer for it when they're sitting around talking about why didn't Biden drop out sooner. Not, by the way, which would not have helped anyway, but that aside, if he had decided not to run and there was an actual primary for the Democrats, Kamala, in all likelihood, would not have won. She may have, but there's a good chance she wouldn't have, and the landscape could look totally different. But to call these people out, I mean, the analogies in my head keep popping up. I mean, Joe Biden is the guy that should not have continued to drive, but you have these family members around him that want him to continue to drive, that, help him rig it so that he passes the driver's test. Yeah, I know. Telling him you can do it. Anyone, and they cover and they hide for him. He accidentally drives off the road. Well, they make sure nobody knows about it. They cover for it and everything. And then the day that he drives into a farmer's market and kills someone, those very people who encouraged him to drive and bought him a brand new car are like, you should have quit driving a year ago. What's wrong with you? It's crazy to me. I think this is the personality trait of some people, and this is a symptom of it. They really genuinely have no sense of responsibility for anything. Yeah. They're never responsible for anything. So it doesn't even, I don't think they even understand what they're saying, because they take no responsibility for their play in it whatsoever.
Well, and it all goes back to the power that the people around them were yielding and the money. I mean, I'm sure Obama, when he was so angry there towards the end campaigning for Kamala, I'm like, he is really freaking out right now. I mean, just think of how their lifestyle's been and whatever is going on behind the scenes of the White House. I mean, he's losing power. Jill, at one point, I mean, all of these people are seeing like their lives disintegrate because they have no other. I mean, the
Yeah.
money and the power that they get from having an incompetent
Well,
president in their party.
the Bidens are going to be impacted that way. The Obamas, they're celebrities, so they're still
Yeah.
going to live that celebrity lifestyle. They're still going to, get paid millions of dollars to show up for 30 minutes somewhere, like a celebrity, because
Yeah.
that's what they are. So they're going to be just fine. We got Christy Volnecki with us. We're going to have more in moments. I'm Nick Reed. We got Christy Volnecki with us.
Yes.
I don't know how to
And
handle this. Harris supporters post videos of themselves weeping after Trump's victory. Now, okay, so this is something that isn't isolated to this. And I believe it is an unhealthy sign of our times that people film themselves for the world to see breaking down and crying.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with crying. It is it's the way God made us for a reason. But it is a sign that we have instilled in a segment of the population that it is somehow almost heroic to be a broken person.
Yeah.
That it is a badge of honor to be emotionally damaged. And I've noticed this for a long time, and a lot of people have. And I remember it's so weird, the things that stand out. And I was watching Lindsay Lohan had a reality TV show for a while where she opened like a restaurant in Greece or something. And I think my wife was watching it, just the first episode, just to see what it was like, because
Yeah.
this was years ago. And so, of course, the first episode, you got all these new hires, and they all get together and they're meeting for the first time, and they're sitting around like a campfire or something, and they're introducing themselves. And every single one of them that was introducing themselves in this sort of informal, well, I came from this background, that background, their resume was how they were victims.
Oh.
Their resume was, well, I was always bullied because of this, or it was about how horrible their lives were. And I realized that these were people, that's how they defined themselves. And it was a badge of honor. Like the worse that your life is, the somehow more virtuous you are. And when you see people, some of which are uncontrollably, because I've watched some of this,
I know. It's
and then,
crazy.
but to think I need
Yeah.
to, and how narcissistic also, I need to film myself losing it and post it on the internet for the world to see me losing it. The combination of narcissism and belief that you are virtuous and have accomplished something because you have the emotional immaturity of a toddler, that's not even about this race.
No,
That
no, that's
that
what I'm
is,
saying. They have mental illness.
and it is a
I mean,
mental
it
illness.
is. I
And
mean, yeah, and I mean, if you don't have empathy and you can't even understand, that's why everybody keeps saying, "Are they gonna, you know, go back and reflect?" The ones now, I'm not saying everybody's like that. What you said earlier, I mean, there are probably people that voted for Kamala because their families or
Well,
Democrats or
sure.
whatever. But the people the reason that everybody's leaving their party in droves is because the crazy people are in charge of it. And so those are the people really have mental illness. I mean, and in the media, I mean, you were talking about, narcissism and you talked about it yesterday. I mean, that is when sociopaths, psychopaths, you have no you're not able to have empathy, and you cannot see the other side and their point of view. So there's no way that you're ever, whatever you say to them, to these
Right.
people that are doing these videos on TikTok and stuff, these kids, I mean, you're not gonna, unless you go into therapy and you get them on some kind of medication.
Well,
There's no way you're gonna change these people's minds.
and here's the problem with what has increasingly infiltrated the therapy industry. And I know because a couple of years ago I read this really, really long piece from somebody who was in the world of psychology, and they were seeing this left-wing ideology enter into psychology. And what happens is that, like, when you have people that are suffering with serious emotional issues, and so this is their reaction to something when something doesn't go their way, instead of treating them by recognizing this is not an appropriate reaction. There's a spectrum of disappointment, and your fears are unrealistic. They're understandable. If you have been told by people that there are going to be executions and this is Hitler and everything,
Yeah, right.
it's understandable. But instead of the appropriate treatment of grounding them back in reality, the approach by those on the left who have gotten into the world of psychology is to instead validate their behavior by validating their incorrect belief, their loss of touch with reality, but instead treating them by helping them get through that. So it's not. So, like, I don't know if you're so a beautiful mind.
Yeah, right.
And so it would be as if the approach, instead of, and the way that and I forget the name of the real person that was based off of, he coped with the hallucinations because he knew they weren't real.
Yeah.
All right. And so he learned to live with it because he knew that that was not reality. It would be as if instead of that, he had a therapist who pretended that those people were real.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah.
just how it is to handle them being real, how it is to emotionally get through it. So it isn't fixing people or helping them get back to an emotionally stable place. It is instead validating the emotional problems they have while just kind of trying to help them feel better about it.
Yeah.
And it's very damaging.
Well,
Because
and
this
you
is,
know
and I'm
what?
not talking
Yeah.
about people that are just sad or mad or upset, but the people that just lose it, hysterical. There is a serious problem there.
Yeah. And we shouldn't be surprised with everything they've done to our culture. I mean, when you have breakdown of family, when you have marriage and everything else that you've criticized as a party, you shouldn't be surprised when you get kids with problems that have been neglected and all kinds of, I mean, you shouldn't be surprised when this comes out and then they start acting out like this. But
Right.
Were you gonna
Okay.
say something?
Yeah. No, I was going to say we're going to get traffic.
yeah,
and
I
then,
figured we had to take a break. So
Yes, you're just so smart. Christy Fonecki with us. I'm Nick Reed. Christy Volnecki with us.
Yes.
Chuck Schumer, of course,
Yes.
Democrat leader of the Senate, is urging the new Senate Republican majority to embrace bipartisanship.
Oh.
Said, as I've said time and time again, in both the majority and minority, the only way to get things done in the Senate is through bipartisan legislation while maintaining our. Oh yeah, now they want to be bipartisan.
You know what?
So
We don't care what you say.
You know what?
We won.
You know what? In that,
Not you, buddy.
in that spirit, a Republican should just go ahead and eliminate the filibuster.
I know, right?
I mean, that's what the Democrats have been talking about doing. Eliminate that filibuster so the minority has absolutely no way to,
you know what?
have any sort of influence.
They just need to get used to being insignificant. Them and the media. I mean, you need to go talk to somebody else because we're not listening to you anymore.
I'd have
we have a
yeah.
mandate, and it would have been even earlier if. I mean, I can't believe it took Fox News so long. I mean, you had Newsmax and everybody else coming out.
I think they were being cautious because they called Arizona early and then pulled it back, and so I think that's why. But they could also. There's got to be somebody. Tom Cotton would be a good one. Tom Cotton, he and Holly sometimes puts out some good tweets too. Yeah, I would, in the spirit of Chuck Schumer asking for bipartisanship, want to go ahead and extend an offer to meet on talking about eliminating the filibuster for them, and adding some new court justices on the Supreme Court.
I know.
You know, I mean, those have been two of their biggest wishes that they have been talking about doing the most. They have felt was absolutely necessary. So I would offer to sit down and we'll talk about doing these two things for you. Let's have a meeting. Let's see what they say about that.
When we have more time, we have to talk about the whole thing with January 6th. I hope everybody's trial, everybody was just waiting until this happened. So I think basically he's going to pardon on certain charges and then look separately at like if you had assault or something.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole other, but I just hope they clean house. They get rid of all these attorneys. I'm not hiring anybody from Department of Justice, by the way. I hope they get rid of all of these people. I can't wait.
Here's how I believe Trump should handle any sort of pardons regarding January 6th. And he has said it would be case-by-case basis, and I think you should continue to say that. And I think that is how it should be.
Yeah.
But I would frame it, because I believe this is how most Americans would go, that makes sense, as it is every one of these cases is going to be evaluated based off of whether or not they were treated like any other American who has in the past committed a similar act. Because no one should
have
the government. No one.
I can tell you
no
right now.
one should be subjected to harsher punishment by the government just because of their political beliefs. And so, any case in which we find someone was treated disproportionately harsh for entering the Capitol without a permit, or parading, or whatever, then those people will be pardoned.
Okay, and so based on what I know, and watching thousands of hours of videos, that would mean everyone would go free.
Yeah. Now, but then if you have people that, well, even if they committed acts of violence, just treat them like everyone else on average.
Yeah.
Anyone
but
else?
What I'm saying is
I
that
know.
no, it was totally. I mean, because you had people, like I said, the pro-Palestinian guy in D.C. that. I mean, he hit a cop in the face, did all this stuff, and he got community service. So pretty much, if you go by the standard you explain, everybody goes free.
And how do you argue against that? How do you say no? Trump supporters should be
you know
punished
what?
disproportionately. No, I know.
America, and we won. Spike the football, and I'm not even listening to those people.
Christy Volnecki, as always, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We've got Author of the Week in the next hour. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. Welcome, everyone, to the show. Washington Examiner has a story. Donald Trump Jr. reveals humorous McDonald's resignation letter. Donald Trump Jr., he posted on his Instagram a tongue-in-cheek resignation letter from his father, Donald Trump, to the McDonald's Corporation. It reads, "Please accept this letter as formal notice of my resignation from my position at McDonald's effective Monday, January 20th, 2025. The satirical letter signed by his father said on the McDonald's letterhead. The letter gives the resignation date the same day as his inauguration. The letter went on to state that Trump has, quote, enjoyed the opportunity to serve customers. I am committed to ensuring a smooth transition during my remaining time here. Please let me know how I can assist in finding and training my replacement." The letter closed with saying that Trump looked forward to his next adventure, but leaves with fond memories of his time at McDonald's. Of course, this is typical. This has become more and more of the Trump persona, whether it's Trump himself or just those in the Trump world, and that is humor. Just normal, everyday, funny stuff. And it is something that is a very defined difference between the left and the right in this country, which 20 years ago, if you had claimed this is how it would be, the world would have wondered how could that possibly be, because the conservatives, the Republicans, used to be the crusty group that doesn't understand humor, and the left, they were the cool, young, hip ones that were funny, and just the complete inability of the majority of people on the left in a political context to be able to just laugh about stuff versus Trump supporters. And what's funny, what's great about Trump supporters is half the time it's laughing with Trump, kind of about Trump, whether it's videos of him dancing or stuff, like that, in which, Trump supporters can laugh at themselves. Proof of that is the fact that here you have the President of the United States declaring you garbage, publicly stating that you are garbage. And how do Trump supporters respond? Putting on garbage bags, dressing up for Halloween like garbage, laughing about it, taking pictures about it. That, you know what that is? We're talking about emotional health and emotional problems. That is the emotionally healthy way of dealing with something. Do you guys have your show planned for Saturday yet? A1 Custom Car Care?
I think we're going to just talk about the latest automotive news.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Recalls, the latest. That's
Recalls.
About it. Yep.
Of course, the show every Saturday with Dustin Atwood and co-host Sarah.
That's me.
That is her right there. Every Saturday morning, and it's all about education, and Dustin, of course, the expert, Sarah there, the one of everybody else, to give that balance and to be able to ask those questions that the normal people need to know about anything dealing with vehicles, whether it's purchasing or problems with vehicles, or as she mentioned, recalls that may be out there, common problems. And that is because A1 Custom Car Care, they are very, very dedicated to making sure you are as informed as possible about your own vehicle, whether that is the digital reports that you get by way of text when they are dealing with your vehicle, or every Saturday on the airwaves right here speaking to the masses about all things vehicle. A1 Custom Car Care for all of your car care needs, and then every Saturday morning right here on Springfield's Talk 1041. And if you miss any of it, there is the podcast section at KSGF.com. Coming up, we do have Author of the Week. Now, this Author of the Week is actually a repeat. I thought it would be a good time to revisit Jamie Truman and her book, Vanishing Fathers, from earlier this year. And the reason that I thought this would be appropriate is given what we have seen in terms of the reaction, a lot of young people to the election, even preceding it, sadly being mocked nationally and probably even internationally, right here at MSU, having sent out information to students that would not be able to handle the election. And we know what that means. Kamala supporters, Trump supporters, be upset, but would handle it in the normal, mature way of being disappointed. The left, they crumble, they break, they fall down. And so MSU was going to offer calming jars and fidget spinners and coloring books for adults. These will be adults, college students, who were incapable of handling the election. And the reason I thought that this would be a great revisit, as I mentioned, this author was recorded earlier in the year, because one of the things she talks about is the role of fathers when it comes to raising children. And the mothers are the ones that are, particularly in the early years, that are the more nurturing, while the fathers are there to, in terms of, survival. When you become an adult and go out into the world, the more how to deal with those things in life, how to, sort of the rough and tumble, and how not to collapse any sort of obstacle that comes your way. And given increasingly the emotional instability and problems that we see in the country with a segment of the population, a certain segment, whenever things don't go exactly the way they want, it seemed like it'd be appropriate time to revisit that. So that is coming up, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 59. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 43. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 63. And on Saturday we have an 80% chance of showers, mainly before the noon hour, with a high near 62.
read. It's Thursday, which means it's time for Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. And this week we have Jamie Truman, who hosts the Truman Charities podcast, a philanthropist's guide to charitable organizations, and is one of the co-founders of Truman Charities, an organization that is 100% volunteer-based. And she has the book Vanishing Fathers. Thank you so much for being with us. This is something that we talk about every so often, just the cultural impact, the real impact of it. And it's something that, politically speaking, so many people, I think even who recognize it, they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to offend certain segments of the population. But I want to start off asking, what prompted you to write the book Vanishing Fathers?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure. And, what happened is that, as you had mentioned, my husband and I started the volunteer-based organization, Truman Charities, and about 14 years ago, raised about $2 million for various charities. And so when I would talk to these founders of nonprofits, and we have about 4 or 5 per year, and there was kind of this underlying issue with, fathers not being involved, but it really didn't spark kind of my real interest until I started my podcast, and that's where I interview nonprofit founders, and I've interviewed, I think over 100 now. And that just seemed to be coming up every single time I was talking to people, is that these fathers were not there, they weren't involved, they had a very complicated or dysfunctional relationship with their father. And, personally on my side, I grew up and my father was, had substance abuse issues. And so I know personally how that affected me. But it wasn't until I started to talk to so many other people that I didn't, that I finally realized that this is a very large problem in our society.
I'm not an expert in this. I share your belief, and frankly, some of this, I don't even think one needs to be that much of an expert just to understand the realities of it. Some of it does seem kind of obvious, and men and women generally have these balances where women have certain attributes, men don't, vice versa. And I've always in my mind recognized the benefit of having, as a child growing up, a mixture of those two things. But something listening to you, I was actually listening to another interview that you did that I thought was interesting, is that because in my mind I just saw it as this timeline of shared benefit. But in reality, like the very early years right after birth is generally when the child benefits more from the mother. But then as we grow up and we get to more of the toddler age, that's when the father's characteristics come in to be beneficial. Talk about that a bit, if you would. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and if you think about it, right? So let me give you an example. I had my first son with my husband, and I'm sitting there in my mind, I'm nursing. I would just want to make sure he's fed and he's warm and comfortable, right? Like this is like, are they sleeping? Are they fed? Are they warm? Like those are the 3 things that go through like a mom's head, and that's all I'm thinking about. And I walk into the room and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm talking to my husband. He's like, I'm setting up their 529. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm setting up their college fund. I mean, like the way that the two people think are so different. Like it's the perfect yin and yang, right? And so, and then if you look, say if you're going to a park, let's go to another common sense, observation. So you go to the park and what do you see? Moms, and I see it myself. I'm very over, like we're very nurturing. So you don't want to get hurt. Oh my gosh, don't do that. That's going to hurt. That's how we speak to our kids. We have this nurturing. We really want to protect them. And then the dads come in and there's so much encouragement. They're like, no, go on the monkey bars. You fall. That's okay. Get back up, run. And they have that encouragement that gives kids the confidence to be independent.
There's you can easily find, I'll see them pop up on social media, and it's generally a dozen or so clips, and it'll be under the banner of, hero dads or something. And they're always funny clips like that. A dad catching the kid at the last minute, or doing, pushing the kid on the bike and goes down the hill and it's exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly is. Just to give, your listeners a little bit of, statistics, is that, and it's really, really astonishing when you look at it. If you look at youth and homeless youth, 90% of them don't have an involved father. 71 youth that have substance abuse don't have a father. 71 high school dropouts don't have a father. 70% of exploited girls don't have a father involved. Like, look how high these numbers are. And so it really is just, it was blowing my mind that we have all of these conversations going on, but we're not having this one. And it's affecting so many children.
We are talking with Jamie Truman, the author of the book Vanishing Fathers. There's at the same time these cultural evolutions that have been taking place. I mean, we're well in them now. And on one hand, it is the toxic masculinity, the demonization of that, while celebrating single moms. Celebrating almost as a virtue that there not being a father in the picture. And it just seems as if from the two genders in which a child can most benefit, the culturally speaking, they've been formulated into the worst case scenario for the kid.
Yeah, and I think that, and you know, I had a couple people after I did my talk segment. I had a couple single moms reach out to me, and they were upset about the segment. And you know, I tried to explain. I said, you know what, read the book, because I have so much admiration and I have such high respect for single moms, because what they have is an impossible task, which is being two people. I was brought up by a single mother, and I saw the sacrifice and how hard it was, because as much as you try, you cannot be the father too, but you'll not stop trying. But it's an impossible situation that they're in, and they just have a much harder job on their hands. And I feel for them. I have a lot of empathy towards single moms, but it should, when we get down to it, we should be talking about what is the optimal situation for a child. An optimal situation is for mother and father. And if the father, for some reason, and I talked to a lot of people in the book, they had lost their father, or say something happened with the father. You know, the best thing that you can do is you have to, which I saw, is some sort of mentor or some sort of father involvement. Say, you know, I spoke to a woman, and she had lost her husband, and her father really came in to help out, or, you know what I mean? So there always has to be someone else helping, because we are built very differently. Biologically, women are, and men are biologically built very differently. So we bring equal traits, different traits to a child to help them become a very well-adjusted, secured, and loved child through their childhood, and so they're well-adjusted adult. And then I'm not saying that they won't be without a father, but it's just a little bit more of a difficult road. Well, and it puts a lot more pressure on the mother.
And I would imagine, to that point, the reason that the book is Vanishing Fathers is because that's the component that's vanishing. If it was Vanishing Mothers, that would be just as much of concern as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, as I said, when I was talking earlier, I mean, when a baby's first born, I mean, they are so connected to the mother. Like, they basically, their whole livelihood is based on me being around. So, you know, and we bring other great attributes to this child, but it's just the optimal situation for a child is to have both. And we just really need to be speaking about this. And I don't understand why this conversation isn't happening with young adults. And I mean, they're actually more like young children. When we're going to these health classes and things of that nature, they should be reading about these stats. These little boys should know how important they are in society and what will affect their child if they're not around. And also girls understanding the effect that it will have on their children if the father is not around.
Well, and I wonder, too, as we talk with our author of the week, Jamie Truman, the book Vanishing Fathers, and you know, we think vanishing in the sense that, okay, there's not a man there. But as we see more and more boys grow up, as you know, into being a man that also didn't have a father, and at the same time downplaying the importance of fathers, the significance of fathers, how much of the vanishing father is the beneficial personality traits of the man that are missing. So in other words, maybe the father is in the picture, but he has been raised in a way that strips him of those character traits that are so important to pass along to the child.
I mean, that's I think it's so important for parents to read and children to read, is that we're really embracing those biological traits, because masculinity is very important. And there is nothing toxic about this. And I hate when people throw that terminology around, because masculinity is what keeps society safe. And so, I was talking in one interview, and I said, let me explain it this way. I have a husband, I have 3 boys, and if somebody breaks in the house, my husband's the first one down the stairs. And if we have a fire, he's the last. So there should be some respect within that masculinity. When things hit, if, SHIT hits the fan here, we're looking for masculine men to save us. So these traits are they're so valuable within society. And instead of telling children and telling boys that that's bad, and that their masculine traits are bad, what we need to be doing is really celebrating those traits, because they are so valuable in life. I mean, it's valuable with my family. Like I wouldn't feel safe unless my husband, if I know he's our protector. Like I know if anything happens, and he's going to take care of us. And that's really, and I think that, every woman should feel that way.
Part of what you do in your book, Vanishing Fathers, in order to perhaps make it a little more digestible or relatable, or you share real-life stories with people that may be known by the reader, some better-known people, celebrity status to some degree, who have grown up with the challenges of a vanishing father, but were able to overcome them. Are there any of those in particular that you find maybe you get a lot of feedback on from the reader that says, man, that person's story really resonated with me?
Wow, it's been is that I have people from various backgrounds, all different type of circumstances, so people would know that even though you may have grown up without a father and you've had more of a difficult road, it's not impossible at all for you to grow up and be a strong man in society and be a wonderful and loving husband and father. So, it's hard to say, but, I know, we had Victor Marks on there, and he was wonderful. He went through the impossible when he was a child through abuse, and now he's a worldwide humanitarian, helping, hundreds of thousands of children and women that have been through some really terrible situations. And then, I spoke with Peter Grumble, and he was in a cult growing up, and then ended up graduating from Yale Law School, and has been wonderful within society and helping so many other individuals. I interviewed Justin Pugh, he played for the Giants in the NFL, and he was a really interesting one, because I had interviewed him, and we first were going to talk about the loss of his father, and it really turned into this wonderful conversation about the involvement of his stepdad and how he really had so much influence on him. And that's kind of what I had said earlier. It's like, when you have a loss of a father, or they're not around, having someone else step in for that role and really taking over is so very important for young children. And that's just a couple. There's just so many other great stories within this. And the greatest, and the really great thing I think about this in this book is that, I really want it to help so many people. So as many people as we possibly can. So 100% of the proceeds are going to be going to charity for at-risk youth, different charities. So, we're hoping that this will help in so many different ways.
Well, I appreciate you being with us this morning and the book, and I would really encourage people to pick it up, because there is this instinct. You noted the conversation that you had with a mother that was a single mother and taking offense to this. And people they feel, I think, as you do, sympathy for single moms. And so they don't want to feel as if they are insulting the abilities, that here they are undertaking something that is more difficult because they are a single mother. And I don't want to make them feel bad or as if they're failing, but that's not what this is about. And I think the book is done in a way that can help people realize that it's not about protecting the feelings of the mother, but what's best for the mother and the father and the child as well. The book is Vanishing Fathers. The author of the week, Jamie Truman, Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Tomorrow morning, we will be broadcasting live from Scramblers, 6A to 9A, sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting, powered by 3M Window Film. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, should be joining us in the 8 o'clock hour. It's a great time to take advantage of her presence. Have any questions about home buying, home selling, and anything in between? She'll be more than happy. Even just like curb appeal stuff, or because of what she does, she knows what ways to best get your house ready for winter. So you may not even be thinking about selling your home, but you want to maintain it. Utilize her. She'll be there, barring any unexpected circumstances, of course. Just after 8 o'clock, as we broadcast live Scramblers 6A to 9A tomorrow, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041. Sarah Myers here, the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, we are finally starting to see that fall weather in the Ozarks. And now is the time to prepare your home for that cooler weather, and that includes your gutters and your roof. Now, whether you need a whole new roof or just a simple roof repair, or maybe you want to do a checkup on just how your roof is doing, I highly recommend Josh and the team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections for you. They're going to be upfront and honest about the work that needs to be done because they just want the best solution for you and your home. And sometimes that doesn't mean a whole new roof. Maybe it just means a simple roof repair. So if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection, give Josh and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com. The first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 59. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 43. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 63. And on Saturday, we do have an 80% chance of showers, mainly before the noon hour, with a high near 62.
Hey, everybody. Caitlin Pack joins us.
Hello.
How are you there?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing just fantastic. Springfield Symphony.
Yes, we are very excited. We have another concert coming up, and love coming on and talking to you guys about it. So this time we are having our first Pops and Premium concert of the season.
Nice.
And it is called Lullaby of Broadway. So,
Yes.
any guesses?
Maybe some Broadway.
There will be some Broadway, yeah.
Quite possibly. See, I'm very in tune.
Yes. So we are actually doing a concert version of Carousel.
Oh,
The
all
Rodgers
right.
and Hammerstein's
Yeah.
wonderful, beautiful musical that we all know and love from the stage. We're bringing it here to Hammons Hall, and we're partnering with Reynolds College of Arts, Social Science, and Humanities at Missouri State, and their musical theater and dance department is coming to join us on stage.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, this usually we have you in just the day before, a couple days before. This is a week away, correct?
Yes,
Is that
so
right?
it
Okay.
is on Saturday, November 16th.
All right. So, how is this people that? How's it different from if somebody's like, well, I've seen Carousel or I'm familiar with that? How will this look different?
Yeah, so it's a little bit more pared down from what you would expect like a Broadway musical, what you watch. So you'll have the full orchestra on the stage, and you will have the performers in front on the stage, as well as we'll have some visualizations with projections
right.
and some really cool integrative arts that all come from everybody over at MSU, and they are so exciting to work with us, and we haven't done a partnership with them in a couple years. We're excited to bring them back.
Is there going to be a behind the baton?
There is not. So yeah, with our Pops and Premium, it's just the concert
Okay,
itself.
I thought that was
Yeah.
the case, but
Uh-huh.
I thought
We
I'd
wish we
ask.
could do it for everyone, but
Right.
this is a very large production, so it's just we have a lot of things and a lot of rehearsals that need to happen. So
all right, so that is coming up the 16th. Do you want to preview anything that's going to be coming down the pike? Because the holidays are coming up.
yes, our holidays are coming up, and actually our Christmas show called In the Mood is actually selling out really early this year. So if you want to get your tickets, I'd say get them now. It's going to be a full your favorite holiday classics and our sing-along that we do every year, and it's going to be really cool. We'll be on stage with the Mid-America Singers, and it's going to be a fun night. So if you're looking to get your holiday plans early, go ahead and get them now before they sell out.
Do you all have like around Christmas time season passes? Is that a good time to buy those?
Yeah, so we-
like as a gift maybe.
Absolutely. So we usually towards the end of November, usually around Black Friday, we'll announce some holiday packages, and typically we do one that's like a mid-season ticket package, so you can get all the shows from January to May.
Okay.
Or we have some other special packages coming out as well. So those will come out probably at the end of the month.
And to get tickets for next Saturday's performance.
Yes. So all of our tickets are obviously on our website, springfieldmosymphony.org, or you can go over to Hammons Hall in their box office and they'll get you taken care of as well.
All right. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course, Caitlin, and it is the Springfield Symphony. We'll get all that relevant information up on our social media. It's ksgf.com as well. And we are streaming live. KSGF.com for those of you who aren't listening. You can always find us there. Just thought I'd throw that in. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Any word about why Arizona and Nevada vote counting's taking so long? I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record or like I'm trying to make everything political, but Secretary of States are Democrats. I mean, this is a common problem with voting and vote counts that are run by Democrats, whether it is statewide or it is countywide. This is standard practice. California is a state I mentioned. One of their last, and I don't know if it was the midterm. It wasn't a presidential election, and it was several weeks. It is an embarrassment to the world, in front of the world. Other countries do not have these problems. Red states, frankly, in this country do not have these problems. Red counties do not have these problems. And while every county and every state that is run, or Secretary of State's office that is run by Democrats, isn't necessarily plagued to the extreme degree others are, within Democrat offices, these problems are consistently in Democrat-held areas. There are two potential reasons behind it. One, incompetence, the inability to effectively carry out duties. And the other is corruption. Trying to rig things, trying to find votes. Sometimes it may be one, maybe the other. Sometimes it might be a combination of the two. What to me is even further embarrassing is the fact that you have people in those states that seemingly are not, they don't require greater results because they will put the same people in charge. You would think that looking around and seeing that that there are parts of the country that are able to carry out the same duty. I mean, it's not as if Maricopa County, Arizona, is burdened with some task that is so much greater than what Miami-Dade County in Florida deals with. Yet Miami-Dade County in Florida, which I would imagine even has a greater population, they manage before the night's over, like within a couple hours. Here you have some of these Democrat-run counties or states and then counties. It's compounded oftentimes by the dual Democrat control there. They can't get done in days. What others take hours to do. You'd like to think that's unacceptable, but clearly it isn't to those voters because the voters end up choosing these individuals, particularly when it comes to being Secretary of State. And I know some people, they just vote Democrat because they're Democrat, and there are people that always vote Republican because they're Republican. And I'm not going to pretend as if I'm a mixed bag of votes, because when it comes down to results, one party has demonstrated, though not perfect, they clearly are much better at making things work than the other party. But you'd think, I would think, even if I'm a Democrat and I live in a state or I live in a county that is constantly vexed with voting irregularities and problems, up to and including taking weeks to do what 90% of the country is able to do in hours, I would say we need someone new in there. Whether it be by way of primary or general election. Of all the positions, Secretary of State seems like a weird one to be so hung up on political party that you would consistently vote for somebody that is proven to be such a miserable failure just because they're a Democrat. I get it when you're talking about a governor, when you're talking about state legislature, and I'm not saying that Secretary of State's office can't be impacted by ideological differences, but for most people, the only time they are even aware of what the Secretary of State is doing is come election time. And even if I'm I vote, it's Republican. And if the Republicans demonstrated when it came to that job how horrible they are at it, election after election, and they don't fix things, they don't get any better, and somebody came along that was an opposing political party that ideologically I was opposed to, but they're like, listen, I have a plan, give me a chance, I'd probably vote for him and give him a chance. It's just an absolute embarrassment, particularly given the fact that we now allow people to vote early, so you would think that would be what some people would call a head start. That instead of it then taking longer to process things, it would take shorter amount of time because while it may increase the number of people voting, you would flatten the curve by allowing people to vote over several weeks. I mean, again, other countries do not have these problems. Other countries that have 1 day of voting, our European allies, most of the country, it's 1 day of voting. Some countries only paper ballots, and they go through and they hand count everything. And in a day, they know. While we have a greater population, we also have a greater number of people that are responsible for making sure that the count occurs. Well, I don't know the exact numbers. I imagine per capita, you've got the ratio of people voting to the people who are responsible for counting the voting probably isn't too far off from people in the rest of the civilized world. Yet we still have some of these people that, Arizona, Nevada, it's just, and it can be turned around. Florida proved that. Florida was the embarrassment of elections in 2020. Florida thought, we need to fix this. And now Florida's one of, if not the best state in terms of accuracy, in terms of expediency, efficiency, voter integrity. And this, of course, is, again, one of the reasons that government is so ineffective and inefficient is because they're allowed to be. And in many instances, they're rewarded for it. Imagine, I guarantee you, the people who run the counties that are incapable, and the states, the Secretary of State's office, that are incapable of managing the vote in a way everyone else is probably the same people over and over again, over and over. Why should they change? Why should they improve? They get rewarded. Our standards in certain pockets of this country have become so low that you can be responsible for vote counting, something that back in the 1800s took a day to do. You don't even have to go that far back, obviously, but somehow with the advancement of technology and everything under the sun, private industry making things work faster, more efficient, you go the opposite direction. And your attitude is, people rehired me, so. And it's true. Ultimately, the people in that jurisdiction who make the vote, it's up to them. And if that's the level of satisfaction that they seek, then so be it. But what an embarrassing display. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Have you seen on the shelves yet? Macadoodle Price Cutter in the Springfield Market, Kansas Territory Brewing Company beer. Brought to you by Show Me Beverage, importing it into the area from the wonderful Washington, Kansas, whether it's the Pineapple Life Coach or the more, I don't want to say standard, but the go-to, perhaps, the go-to Bradford Light. That's the sort of beer that you always have on hand. You always have on reserve. You always got it in the garage. You know that if somebody comes over, you can offer it to them and they're going to be satisfied. Tailored for the hardworking men and women who appreciate the reliable, easy drinking experience. 3 by 8%, not bad. That's the Bradford Light. You can find it, and of course, other Kansas Territory Brewing Company beers on the shelves in the Springfield Market now at area price cutters and Macadoodles. There are a number of stories around Jon Stewart and a little rant that he did railing on pollsters and how it is that they screwed the pooch and how they cannot be trusted and on and on and on. And I'm not here to defend pollsters. And Lord knows that they have in the past demonstrated that they were way off. And there were some weird polls, like that Iowa poll that said Kamala Harris was up by 3 in Iowa. You get these sort of weird, whatever the reason, outcomes. But the reality is, and so in Stewart, he was saying, you people don't know blank, you don't know blank. The reality is, most of the polling and the evaluators of the polls leading up to the election, they all said that. We don't really know. It could go either way. Most of, on average, the polling was within margin of error, and the analysis on the most part was it would just take a slight tilt one way or another to be an electoral blowout because of how close the polling is. And in a lot of these states, you look at the toss-up states, and they were just oftentimes within the battleground states a margin of error, talking maybe 3 percentage points or 2 percentage points. And when you have polling that does a margin of error at 3.5 percentage points, and all the acknowledgement that, that margin of error tilt, whichever way it goes, could lead to a big win overall for one candidate or the other, that was accurate. I think that people like Jon Stewart are mad because they just could not conceive Donald Trump would win, and so in their minds, because they weren't prepared for that emotionally, they're blaming, amongst others, pollsters for not letting them know ahead of time. But overall, the pollsters weren't that far off in that analysis that it could be a big win for Trump, depending on that margin of error tilt. Glenn Beck's next. See you tomorrow at Scramblers. I'm Nick Reed.